Welcome back to the Primitive Camping and Bushcraft podcast. My name is Chris Speir, and I'm going to be your guide to enjoying the great outdoors. So today, we're going to discuss one of the most essential tools that you can take with you into the woods for shelter, and the tarp. I have used a Double D 3x3 for years. Actually, I've had several of them. After a while, using them as heavily as I do, they start like punching holes in them, stuff like that. I throw firewood on my tarp, drag it through the woods like a silly person would, but I've done that before, gathering my firewood, and eventually you're going to poke holes through it. You know, it's not designed for that. The Double D tarp system is specifically made for like hanging on a ridge line, or for just making a shelter, an A-frame, lean-to, or, all these different various kinds. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about that. And, a tarp originated, they've used tarps for years. As soon as they started weaving stuff together, they've used tarps as tents and, combined them with oils to make them lighter. During the Civil War, they had oilcloth. Revolutionary War, they had oilcloth tents, and it was very lightweight. They could carry it. They could do whatever they got to do. But tarps, are historically used to cover like goods and stuff whenever they're ferrying overseas, whenever they're like keeping seawater and salt water off of your gear and all your cargo that you're transporting from one place to the other. And it worked for that, and that's what they used it for. What they do is they would cover a canvas like a drop cloth that we have today. That would probably be one of the closest resemblances of what I'm trying to talk about. But like this drop cloth thing would be covered in tar. And that tar would repel the seawater and keep everything waterproof inside there, keep everything dry. And so, canvas sheets coated with tar was one of the first variations of a tarp, in my research and studies, eventually evolving into lightweight waterproof tarps that we use today. And, they've used tarps for tents for shelters for long time. I can't even put a time period on it, but good stuff. So tarps and everything are great, especially if you're using like a Double D, what's the name of it? East Ridge tarps makes a good one. I have one of those. The problem with that tarp is that they make a seam down the middle of the tarp, and when it starts raining, eventually it starts leaking on that seam, so you're going to have to do some waterproofing or something on that seam. But that was a cheap alternative when I first started getting gear and stuff like that. And I was like, man, I ain't paying $75 for a tarp. Wished I did. I'd have saved 30 something bucks, if I just went ahead and bought the $75 tarp. But, I think it's East Ridge or something like that. That tarp, I have that tarp up in the woods right now, covering a hammock in the woods at a little campsite that I set up. And that's been a little good tarp. It has actually set up for 9 months now. It's been set up, and during the hurricane, it actually tore one of the grommets out, and that's it. That's all the damage. It actually lasted a pretty good time. But the Double D 3x3 it's got so many attachment points that it's perfect for setting up in A-frames. It's perfect for setting up in various other configurations that, once this other one goes out, I'm going to go ahead and order another one. This will be my third one. It'll be my third one. And like I said, I'm tough on the tarp. I'm rough on the tarp. I just bunch that puppy up. I don't, I just shove it in the bag and throw it in there. And then I throw firewood and leaves and all kinds of stuff on it, drag it through the woods. And so punctures holes in it, stuff like that. Modern tarps can range from a few dollars to a few hundred, depending on the material and the quality. Now, when I'm talking about a modern tarp, I'm not talking about running down to Harbor Freight and buying one. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not the kind that you're going to be using in a backpack. All right. The big, thick, heavy duty tarps that they make at Harbor Freight, they're great. They will suffice. You know, the grommets come out a lot. The tarp edges will tear. The wind will actually rip them to shreds. And these are the heavy duty ones over time. I'm not talking about like upfront and blunt with it. You know, I'm just talking about over time. But these tarps, man, I'm telling you right now, these tarps are heavy. They're extremely heavy. If you get one that is, let's say 9 by, I think tarps are made in weird sizes. I mean, I don't know who in the world come up with the sizes for tarps, and I don't understand why. I don't know, and maybe I'm missing something. If I'm missing something, leave me a comment. Let me know. You know, get in touch with me and let me know if I'm missing the reason why tarps were designed the way modern tarps are designed, because they are very oddball shaped. They're oddball dimensions, and they really, I don't know what the purpose is. I don't know if it's like to secure loads, to cover loads. I don't know if it is an oddball shape, you know, or dimension for some reason or not. So if there is, get in touch with me, let me know, and hook me up with some knowledge. But anyway, modern day tarps at Harbor Freight they have some canvas ones that are pretty good. I've had a canvas tarp hung up in the woods for a long time, but like I said, the grommets get pulled out. I've used that tarp for several things, and I ended up taking it and cutting it apart and using the canvas strips to make a bag, and kind of like a millbank bag type deal. It worked pretty good. The problem with it is I could not get my seam sewn tight enough for some reason. I don't understand. You know, I was hand sewing it, so I don't have a sewing machine, but then that's probably all why. But anyway, the canvas bag is pretty cool. You know, the canvas tarps are pretty cool, but they're heavyweight. Now, if you've seen any of my videos, I have a video out there about how to make a bed sheet waterproof. Nighthawk in Light is the name of the guy that does a YouTube channel, and he demonstrated this on his channel. And so I looked at it one day and I was like, you know, I'm going to try that to see if it actually works. I'm really going to do it. So I filmed it as I was doing it, and, you know, I gave the dude credit. I mean, it's a great channel. He does all kinds of science experiments and stuff like that. So if you haven't checked it out, check out Nighthawk in Light. And he does some real good stuff. And he's got a huge channel. But he did this video on how to make a tarp out of a bed sheet using some naptha. Naptha is the same. It's kind of like it's like a mineral spirits. It's more potent mineral spirits. And some silicone, and that silicone and naphtha, you combine those two ingredients, and the naphtha dissolves the silicone, and then you take the sheet and you saturate it inside this substance, you know, and this dissolved silicone. You hang it up and you let it dry, and whenever you do, you have completely waterproofed a cotton bed sheet. It'll work for canvas, it'll work for cotton, and I'm not so sure about certain nylons or not, because I don't know if the naphtha would dissolve the nylon. But in the course of making this video, I did 2 bed sheets. I did one to see how it worked, and then I did one to film. That way, while I was hanging one up to dry, I could actually demonstrate the other one to use. And it went pretty good. I mean, you pour water in it, it holds water. It will actually hold water. You can actually transport water inside of a bed sheet. You can hold it, fill it up, and it will hold it. 100% legit. I mean, this thing was amazing. So I did that video, and to give credit to that Nighthawk and Light, the dude, that was the most amazing science experiment I've ever seen. And I never, I never heard of him until then. But whenever I did that and followed along his ingredients, it's kind of like if you want to do this, blah, blah, blah. I gave him credit. He actually commented on the YouTube page in the comment section, so I pinned it on that video. And but you can give him credit to whoever credit's due. But anyway, that tarp, I have used it forever. Matter of fact, I think it's in some of my camping stuff up in the attic. I have one that it just got ripped to shreds from a hurricane, or a bad windstorm. And then the other one is folded up nice and neat in my attic, and it's been exposed to heat, and it still is waterproof to this day. And it's a great tarp. Now, with that being said, people's like, why don't you just buy an oil tarp or a oilcloth or an oil skin tarp? And I'm like, man, because some of those dudes are $250 when I can go buy a bed sheet from a thrift store for cheap, a king size bed sheet for 10 or 12 bucks, a thing of silicone for $3, $5, whatever. I don't know how much it is now. Then I could get some naptha. And then you take that naphtha and you dissolve the silicone, you put your bed sheet in there and you hang it up, and you got yourself a 80-something by 80-something inch, 83 by 83, I think, is what a king size comes out to be. But if you did that 83 by 83, that's a big old tarp. And you hang that dude up and it dries out, and you got yourself a nice little A-frame shelter. It's very lightweight. I mean, extremely lightweight. And it is... It doesn't have that oily feel or that oily smell. It doesn't get all over your gear, and it is not very. It is kind of fire retardant. I guess because the silicone makes it to where it's a little fire retardant. So it's pretty cool little experiment. It's a pretty cool thing. So if you're looking into something like that, the only downfall is the grommets or tie outs or whatever. It don't have any. So you have to use like an acorn or a piece of dirt or something put up in there and then tie it around. Done a video on that too. So check out my YouTube pages on all that stuff. So, but anyway, tarps are lightweight, waterproof, multi-use, and they serve various purposes from shelter to water collection. Tarps are instrumental in water collection. Tarps, if you set your shelter up, you can also use that to collect your water. And, once it starts raining, the rain drips off of your shelter, you just set it up to where you can collect that water. I've done that several times camping, and it works great. It works great. And I've never had a problem with that. Now, excuse me. And there's a lot of people out there that will argue with you until you are blue in the face. Or they are blue in the face, whatever you want to call it, but about PFAS or forever chemicals. And yes, I agree that's an issue. I don't believe it's a government conspiracy. I don't. There's a lot of people out there in the extreme conservative far right that's just like, whoa, everything's a government conspiracy. And, it swings both ways. I'm not here to do politics by any means, but, that people's argument is that you can't drink the rainwater. Well, that's a government restriction. They don't want you to drink the rainwater because they want you to depend on them, so they put out all these notices. Yes, there may be, but here's the problem with that. And I double down on that in the book, is that if the rain is contaminated with forever chemicals, then all the water on earth is contaminated with forever chemicals. So why would it be safer to drink the stuff that they process to give you with all the chemicals in it than to collect the rainwater? That's food for thought. And you just think about that, take it whatever way you want. And, but anyway, that's just my opinion on that. And I'm just here to give you my opinion. Not that it is valued or anything like that. But, I personally, whenever I head out into the woods, I never head out into the woods without a tarp. It doesn't matter if I have a tent. Last week we talked about hammocks and tents, and it's a good idea to have either one in for your shelter. Sometimes I've done it without. I've just a bed, a blow up mattress, like a little sleeping pad, and a tarp, and I've slept on it like that, and that is perfectly fine. That is a shelter and a bed, and there's nothing wrong with it. So, but sometimes a lot of people will put a tarp above their tent. That way, if it rains, they don't get water in their tent, stuff like that. So whenever I venture out, I always have a tarp. Let me know your thoughts. I mean, do you always take a tarp with you whenever you head out into the woods? So, you guys should be able to leave some comments or whatever if you listen to this podcast. I know you can if you're listening to the video. And it's not like anybody watches the video. Average watch time is like 2 minutes and 30 seconds on these videos. And actually, I've actually thought about cutting the videos out and just doing the podcast, but I don't know. We'll see. So I frequently use the double D 3x3 or DD 3x3, which means 3 meters or 9.84 by 9.84 feet. And this tarp has 19 attachment points and is fully weather sealed, and it's double stitched, making it robust for camping. Now, these attachment points are great if you want to do different configurations. So starting in the next podcast, we're going to start going through different configurations for tarps. And it's pretty cool. You could do the A-frame, you could do the lean-to, you could do the Adirondack, you could do the diamond fly, stuff like that. You could do the plow point. And those are just the easy ones. Those are, you could do 5 shelters with a tarp, and you can camp the rest of your life with just those 5 shelters, Now, the reason I use that double D 3x3 is simply because of the attachment points. It's already on there. I don't have to tie an acorn or a rock or some dirt into a corner and then loop it around and use that as an attachment point. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go to Speir Outdoors on YouTube and check that video out. So now, once you get out there, you're going to be setting up a ridgeline. And a ridgeline is the highest point of your shelter, similar to the top ridge of your house. So if you've looked at the rafters and everything on your house, it's got your ridge. That's what it's called, the ridge. And that is going to be where all the rafters join in. And then it is like the backbone. And then you have all the rest of your skeleton or your ribs or whatnot attached to it. And so that ridge line is what we're going to use to set up our shelter. And you're going to do it between 2 trees. One end, I like using the overhand loop knot and a prusik or a toggle. And then on the other end, do it a trucker's hitch. It's the easiest and the most effective way. And then, get it real nice and tight. Use a couple of prusik knots, prusik loops. And then on each end of your tarp, you just feed another toggle through, and you could tighten that puppy down, and it's not going anywhere. It's not going to fly away or fall apart. And then, once you start getting that thing set up, then you can, from there, depending on the type of shelter you want, if you got an A-frame and you're hanging a hammock underneath it, obviously you're going to have your ridge line higher. And if you're doing a lean-to, you're going to do it a little bit lower. If you're doing a modified lean-to or whatever, where you have this little part coming over, like a roof. So if it starts raining, you don't get rained on, you could do that. There's no problem with that. So, But I like to do the lean-to. That's my favorite way to go, unless I am doing, a hammock. Then I always do an A-frame. Now they say that the diamond fly gives you a little bit more coverage, and it does. It's like hanging the tarp, in a diagonal fashion. It gives you a little bit more coverage, but I just do a typical A-frame, style. Flying A-frame, they call it, or whatever, that's raised up real high with the tie outs. So, toggles are extremely important in this whole process. And all a toggle is a little piece of wood. And for those of you that don't know, this is mainly geared for the people that don't really know, but a toggle is about a piece of wood about 2 inches, 3 inches long. And, you can run your prusik knots, stick them through there and stick them through your attachment points, then put a toggle through there, that piece of wood in there, and then it will hold it right there. So, should be good to go. My camera died over here for some reason. There we go. We're back online. So, but anyway, then you have your guy lines. Guy lines are essential to adjusting the tarps coverage based on the weather. So you can raise it out. If you're doing an A-frame, you can let it raise it up and down. You can do the wings lower, wings higher. It depends, whatever you want to do. And then you carve your tent stakes out of sticks that have fallen off the tree branches, and do those dudes, or you can tie your tie outs to a sapling or a tree or whatever's nearby. Now going back, taking a couple steps back, prusik knots allow for adjusting tension along your ridge line. Now, prusik knots are very important on this process, because you're going to make a little loop, and then you're going to tie your prusik knot. And I cover the knots, how to tie those knots in the book, but on each end, and I talked about it briefly just a second ago, but that is the simplest way to attach a tarp to a ridge line, because it's not going to slide back and forth. It holds the tension. Once you put tension on it, it holds in its place. It's not going to slide. It's not going to move until you let the tension off. And so whenever you put that prusik knot through and put that toggle in there, and you just tighten that puppy up, there you go. Your tarp's stuck there. It's not going to move. It's not going to sway in the rain. So, tent stakes. It sounds silly, but some people prefer to carry them with you. Some people prefer to make them when they get out there. Me, whenever I'm arriving at a campsite late, I prefer to have them with me, because I don't want to be rummaging through the woods at night trying to find sticks and stuff like that. But, to each their own. So, but, this little thing about tarps, we're going to dive real deep into it next time. I know I say that all the time. Somebody commented on one of my last video and said, "You lied in this video twice." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And it really hurt me, because I was like, I didn't lie. I didn't lie at all. And they said, "No, you lied because you never dived into anything." I was like, man. So, whatever. But anyway, the next video, we're going to get into different aspects of shelters with a tarp, like how to hang these certain shelters. And then after that, we will get into the next chapter in the book. So, all right. So that's it. Tarps are versatile. To recap, a double D 3x3. And I highly recommend that. I mean, there may be other ones out there. If so, leave me a comment. Let me know which one is better. But so far, 10, 12 years into this, I have never found one better than the DD 3x3, for the price. I'm not paying $250 for an oilcloth. I'm not going to do it. It's just not going to happen. I'll pay $75 for a tarp. And if that one goes bad, I'll pay another $75. But, as far as versatility and lightness, you're practically not going to beat it for the price. And if you need to, you can get you two of them. That's just the way I feel about it. So, but anyway, next video, like I said, we're going to go ahead and start setting up different shelters, hooking them up. And I'm actually thinking about doing that podcast out in the woods and doing the live video doing a live demonstration. And that way we have real tactile what's going on, so we shall see. But anyway, all right, guys, thank you so much for joining me on this video and this podcast, and I can't wait to see you guys again. I really appreciate your support. Don't forget, swing by Amazon. They're $14 right now, 14 and change, whatever. Pick up your copy of Primitive Camping and Bushcraft. Yeah, got some big stuff in the development with this book, and we're going to be working on that, and I'll be letting you guys know first because y'all are on the podcast, and then we'll start announcing it to all the video, but that's coming up in the works. So, hey, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time. God bless you.